So COVID cases are down, the economy on the rebound, but you may have also noticed that the price of just about everything has been going up. Why? Well, economists, including former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, are split on whether that's just a blip on the road to recovery or whether we could be looking at the beginning of runaway inflation. Summers is warning of the rising risks of a Vietnam inflation scenario. And joining us now is the former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, leading economist and top economic advisor to former Presidents Obama and Clinton. Secretary, thanks so much for being with us. The White House and the Fed both think that these inflation spikes we are seeing are transitory. They won't last, in other words. You think differently. Why?
I hope they're right, and it's certainly possible that they could be right. But I look at the pervasive pattern of shortage, which is emerging in more and more areas, starting critically with the labor market, which is the biggest cost for most goods. I look at surveys of consumers. 90% of Americans are worried about inflation, expected inflation ramped up to a number above 4% in the latest Michigan survey. I look at the facts and the amount of money we're putting into households' hands relative to the capacity of the economy to produce. And I look at the serene complacency that we're in a new era and that we can increase demand almost without limit, and that we're still trying to get inflation up, that we're hearing out of Washington. And I think all of that together is much larger than the kind of extra fiscal policy we had in the 1960s that set off the inflation, where inflation went from being in the ones to being in the sixes between 1966 and 1969. So I don't know that we'll get anywhere near the sixes this time, but I do think we've got an acceleration.
What would you do about it right now, then? If you're right, what would you do if you're the Biden administration? And I suppose, what would you do if you're the Fed?
First, I'd recognize that our challenge right now is no longer insufficient spending. It's the economy overheating. Second, I'd support the efforts that many states are making to get people back to work by converting unemployment insurance into reemployment bonuses. Third, I'd make sure that the tax increases are measured to go along with the spending increases as we pass the vitally important kinds of measures contained in the Jobs Act and the Families Act. Fourth, with the housing market completely on fire, I'd have the Fed stop buying up mortgages to drive rates even further down. But overall, this is heavily about expectations and psychology. And I think if we recognize that there is an issue and a problem and make clear a policy commitment to do what's necessary to keep us in a world of stable prices, those expectations can be self-fulfilling. But if we say there isn't any problem and we can let it all rip with policy, those expectations can be self-fulfilling too.
I'm not sure they're saying letting it all rip, right? They're saying it's within a manageable framework here. And the Fed is saying if it goes beyond that, then they can respond by raising interest rates. And I just want to point out, Goldman Sachs yesterday, put out an analysis based on the new numbers that they have seen in the PCE, the personal consumption expenditures, which is how they measure inflation. They see inflation really, around 2, a little bit higher than 2 over the next year, but nowhere near the 6. And I know you're not saying we're going to be at 6%, but nowhere near runaway inflation or Vietnam scenarios, a little bit over 2%, but nothing extraordinary here. What's your number? I mean, lay it out there. What number do you think will be at in inflation?
I'd say, first of all, if you look at the history of the Vietnam thing, at every step it seemed gradual. And I've never used the word runaway, and I don't think it's going to be runaway inflation, but I think that we lost control gradually through a sequence of steps taken by people who appeared reasonable, who were always emphasizing the special factors. The last time we made this mistake. Second, it could be that this kind of optimism will prove to be warranted. I think there are a lot of issues with these price indices. You know, if you look at the inflation measures, right now the indices like that personal consumption expenditure deflator you referred to, they're saying that housing is a major factor holding down inflation. Well, if I talk to Americans and look at the data on people trying to buy houses or people trying to enjoy the houses they bought last year, those houses are on fire, going up more rapidly than they have in many, many years. That doesn't feel non-inflationary to me, and I think eventually that's got to show up in any proper price index. I look at the magnitude of the shortages of labor. Look, it was right 10 months ago to be supporting people who couldn't work because of COVID. It was an important and right thing to be doing. But right now, we've got labor shortages in so many places, and it's not like we still have an economy that's deeply depressed. GDP has already passed its peak previous level. Most people think we're going to be above the economy's potential by the end of the year. That's just not a time to be stepping on the accelerator as hard as we can.
Larry Summers?
And that's why I'm concerned about where we are. If it was just fiscal policy or just monetary policy and one was offsetting the other, that would be different. But we've got both of them together going hard. And I just don't think the cost benefit on that is the right one. But there are no certainties, and it could turn out that the optimists will be right.
Larry Summers, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.